Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the Heart of the Soul podcast. I'm your host, Amana Faulkner, and I am so glad you are here. Yes, you. This is a space where we remember what it means to be wild, human, and alive, breathing life back into storytelling, bringing awareness to the changes our stories make over time. This is a safe place where we honor each other's differences and connect about that which unites us all. I am a woman, a creative entrepreneur, a mother. I am a keeper of both birth and death. I've been holding space for those that are birthing and dying for over a decade. I hope that you might feel a flutter of connection as you listen to this raw, unedited conversation. Today is December 27th, 2021. I'm located in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. It's winter here and there's a fresh blanket of snow on the ground. I have been feeling super cocooned recently, lying on the couch, gazing at our fire, watching the snow fall, reading and doing nothing. And it has been wonderful. I am delighted to have Eliza with me today and have been looking forward to this conversation with her. I first heard her speak on the Free Birth Society podcast. The tone of her voice, the depth of her story sharing, and the way she began with her own birth story. She touched my soul. Eliza, I would love to invite you to introduce yourself, tell listeners where you are in the world, and begin sharing that which you feel called.
A deep, heartfelt welcome to all of you who are listening, and a much, much great thank you to dear Amana for inviting me into this special space that she has created. My name is Eliza. I'm 26 years old, and I'm a mother, a radical birth keeper, an artist, a photographer, a woman, and a sister. And my deep belief is that together we will birth the new earth. As a transformational birth coach, I work with strong women who are ready to fully set themselves free through radical self-responsibility. And my life's mission is to envision and create safe spaces for women where they can rediscover and reconnect with their womb's wisdom and thrive as maidens, mothers, and crones, supporting each other in all rites of passages that are our birthright as women. I offer life-altering childbirth education that is rooted in a woman's sovereignty and innate physiology. And just want to welcome you all back to the Matriarchy Sisters, which is here upon us again.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. And where are you in the world today? And what time is it? It's 9 a.m. where I am.
I am in the Atlantic Ocean in an island, the Canary Islands, which is part of Spain. And even though it's Europe, it's next to Africa, so next to the Sahara. And it's very sunny here and very warm, and it's 5 p.m. and most probably the sun will set while we're in this conversation, so the lights might change while we're talking. And as I look out, it's very sunny and the palm trees are blowing in the wind, and yeah, it's just beautiful over here. I am living in Paris, and not in Paris, next to Paris. I've been living there for the past couple.
And so you are a radical keeper of birth and a mentor to women. How did you come up? What was your path and journey to this work?
I can talk about the part of the journey that I know this far, which is the part of the journey that has happened in my lifetime. And it has started with my own birth, which was a transfer. So my mother wanted a home birth with me, with a midwife, and we were transferred into the hospital. And so finally I was born there, and everything she had wanted for us was finally not possible, and we were separated at birth. And it was a very, very traumatic experience for both of us. And I have very vivid memories of this day, and just decoding this deeply rooted abandonment trauma that I had as entering into this earthly existence has really led me to questioning how I wanted to welcome my own son when I learned that I was pregnant. And so I was 25 years old when I have learned that this new soul has chosen me to be his mother. And so I revisited the story of my own birth and kind of started to untangle what I wanted to keep from that and what I was ready to let go of and heal and forgive and just find where our story was guiding us to. And I first started working with a certified midwife in France, just discovering the whole bureaucratic system around birth. It was very challenging, and yeah, I never had a lot of connection with the allopathic medicine in general, because I was lucky enough, or I don't know if lucky is the good word, but yeah, I grew up in a family where just the idea around health was very different than how allopathic medicine describes health. And so I didn't have a lot of connection experiences with this system. And
So kind of, may I ask, what was it like in your family, this view of health and the way of being healthy in your family?
one of the main beliefs in my family was always that you are what you eat, and how health is something that is holistic and cannot only mean the health of the body. And I was, from kindergarten until end of high school, I was in a Waldorf school system, which is known for this holistic view of not just wanting to fill the child as this empty vase with intellectual knowledge, but where our teachers were our mentors and our guides, who were modeling to us a way of life where body, mind, and soul are equally important and cared for. And so for me, when I stepped into the first midwife's office, as I learned that I was pregnant, she kept asking me all kinds of questions about my body. And at question 65, I was like, wait, but why aren't you asking me about anything else? Like, this is like this is not all that I am. And there are so many other aspects of my personhood. And so that was kind of the first red flag for me, that, okay, so maybe this is like, maybe there is more to this, and maybe this is not the good place to look for the kind of care that I'm envisioning for myself or feeling like I need.
Yes. Had you witnessed birth before? Had you known other people who had babies? What was your connection to like birth at that time, as you were navigating your own was coming?
I knew a couple of people who, like from my friend circle, who've had babies, but they were all or older than me, like 10, 15 years older than me. And from my close circle of friends, I was the first one to step on the journey of motherhood. So I didn't have any women or men in my life who have, through the experience of whom I would have been able to observe this journey. I mean, that's not completely true because my partner, he is a dad. When I met him, he already was a dad of 3 children. So he was the only model that I had, but his children, they were older. So I didn't, I wasn't present for the birth of these children,
Yes.
obviously.
Yes.
So
Did you
yeah,
always,
no, I did
yeah.
people around me.
Did you always know that you wanted to be a mother?
No,
No.
no. When I was a teenager, I went through a period of feeling like it was empowering to say it out loud that I don't want to have a baby and that no one can tell me what to do, and nobody can give me this recipe of how I'm supposed to live my life. And at that moment it rang very true to me to say that.
Mhm.
And then a while later I was, yeah, I just felt like, okay, that might not be true for me actually, and I have the right to change my mind. So I did.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And
And
well,
it's
yeah.
and it's actually very funny because a couple of months before I became pregnant, I started, never in my life I did this before, but I started looking up YouTube videos of home births and free births, and I didn't really understand this sudden fascination with just looking at these very raw images of people coming into this earthly existence. And then a couple of months later, I understood it all, like the pieces all came together.
Yes. And your son's conception was unexpected. Is that correct?
Yes, definitely.
Yes. Would you like to
Yeah,
share a little bit? Yeah.
sure. So I finished my bachelor degree in fine arts in Paris, and I was not exactly sure of the next step, and I applied for a master's degree at the same university, and I wasn't enjoying it that much because it was not exactly what I have imagined, and I just kind of went with the flow for a couple of weeks there, um, and I was about to, like, I was creating a plan for myself for the coming years. And as soon as I had that plan in place, which was to go to Costa Rica for an exchange program and learn Spanish, and then go and do residencies for artists all around the world and just travel and really focus on my career as an artist, I learned that I was pregnant, and I was so pissed the first moment when I found out, because it was literally the first time in my life that I had a concrete plan for the next 2 or 3 years, and it just all, I just had to find a new constellation for all those elements. And
Yes. You weren't mentally maybe prepared for your maidenhood to like shift into motherhood.
I don't think so, no.
Mm.
I don't know if it's maybe for some people it's possible. For me it was impossible. I just really felt like it had to happen like this, because I don't know when I would have felt ready if my son doesn't tell me that, okay, whether you're ready or not, I'm coming now.
Yes. Yes.
And actually it felt very much like he saw me and his papa meeting each other, and very quickly. So we knew each other for 9 months, when we've been together 9 months when he was there, and so it very much felt like to me that he was just waiting for us to like get together, and then as soon as we were, he was ready to come.
Yes. Yes. So, well, yeah, what was this pregnancy like for you and this transition unexpectedly into motherhood and preparing birth? You said you saw a midwife for a little while.
Um, yeah, so I learned about my pregnancy in November 2019. My baby was conceived the 7th of November, and it was actually one of the weirdest experiences of my life, because on this day, the 7th of November, I was at a university class and I was taking notes, and it was a big lecture, like 3.5 hours long, and art philosophy and just all of the like really, really deep stuff. And my mind kind of wandered, and I started doodling in my notebook, and I drew something and I didn't understand it at all. And it was a sun where the rays of the sun were sperms who were coming around the egg, and I didn't understand why, like, where did this come from? I've never been interested in this kind of stuff. And so time goes by, a couple of weeks pass, and on the 28th of November, I found out that I was pregnant. And so I went back in my notebook and I looked at this drawing and the date, and it was literally the moment when my son was conceived. And it was just, yeah, the channeling that happened there. I still don't understand how it was possible. It's amazing.
Amazing.
And this drawing actually was what inspired my logo, and so I kind of put it into this. Yeah, I wanted to keep this image as the timelessness of this moment of conception, and yeah, I wanted to bring that with me into my work as a birth worker. So
Yes, it's a beautiful way to like honor that journey within yourself and your son, and to bring that forward, because we are all, yes, transformed by birth and motherhood, and you're bringing your wisdom and knowledge to other women. I think that is so beautiful.
Yeah. So then on to my pregnancy, it was actually very lonely. I remember feeling lonely most of the time. We went back to Budapest with my partner for like after Christmas, and then we came back at the beginning of January, and then we spent 2 months looking for a place because we weren't living together at this point. So I told him that we have to move by the beginning of March. And again, I only understood afterwards why this date was important. And after it felt like it was actually my placenta that was really giving us the message of this date. And so we did find a place, and we moved on the 2nd of March, and 2 weeks later, everything was shut down. And I was just so grateful that we respected this inner desire that I had to have everything done by this date, because it was important to have at least the presence of my partner and his children around me in the next couple of months, where I wasn't allowed to meet any other human being. So yeah, that was important.
Yeah, your inner wisdom, you knew, a part of you knew that those dates were important.
Yeah, and so like I said, it was a very lonely time for me. I was craving feminine physical presence, and my family is living in Budapest, so we weren't really able to see each other for most of my pregnancy. My parents and my sister finally came in the beginning of July, which was the beginning of my 9th month. So I spent my entire pregnancy with 3 boys, which was a big challenge, but I'm grateful for all the lessons that time has given me. And yeah, I was working with a certified midwife who I was seeing once a month, and I also met up with a doula who was living nearby, and so I had, like, every second week I met with either my doula or my midwife, but it wasn't enough. I just felt like I really wanted to be around women. And
yes, at that time, were people meeting, out in parks and things, or were people very much staying at home where you were in France?
People were pretty much staying at home, and the place where we live is actually, so we moved there just 2 weeks before quarantine, and so to this day I don't know a lot of people around because the general mood is quite fearful. And so especially at this time I had a lot of, like, I was trying to like go out and just manifest those connections, and people were just so scared. So yeah, it took quite some time actually to find those connections there.
Yeah.
Mm.
But you were not scared at that time to go out and be with people.
No, I wasn't. I never really felt like I have a very hard time seeing other human beings as the enemy. That is, and it's not just that I have a hard time, like I refuse to do that. I don't believe on any level that we are each other's enemies. And the moment we start to fear the physical presence of others and the human connection is the moment we lose our humanity, because that's all we have.
Yes. Yes. I absolutely agree with you. Mm.
Yeah. 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 So working with those two women was kind of answering to my needs, as like the needs for connection and the needs for feminine presence. But towards the end of my pregnancy, I started more and more feeling that my midwife was like really not in alignment with how I imagined things. And more and more I started to realize that she was not there to serve me. She was there to do the things the way she wanted to do them, and bring the hospital into my home. And it was quite late that I realized that this is not going to work. The two of us together is just either she will not have what she wants or I will not have what she wants, and I had to choose who was more important. And my partner was a very solid rock for me in that very it was a very, very I don't even know the right word for this, but it felt like being out on the ocean in a huge storm and just feeling like I'm being cut loose from the big ship and just going around by myself. And I have lost all solid ground and I haven't slept for a week. And it was after a big conversation, or rather a big fight between my doula and my midwife, where I finally realized that I cannot invite this woman into my space because she's scared of women in their power, and she doesn't stand to be in the presence of women who are connected with their inner wisdom and who are asking questions. And so yeah, I felt very much betrayed, and I felt like I spent all this time getting to know a person and sharing with her my most vulnerable thoughts and fears and all of the things that I was going through on the journey of my pregnancy, and she just didn't get it. And so my partner had asked me whether, like, what do you think about let's just not call her. And when I heard him say that, and I just allowed myself to imagine if I could I be okay with that, I had such a deep yes in me that I knew that this is the way it was meant to be from the beginning. And that's how I could actually I could feel grateful for this woman and all the nasty things that she's done, because she has allowed me to come to the realization that I don't need anyone to give birth. I just need myself, my uterus, and my baby in my uterus, and that's it. And yeah, it was very liberating, to say the least, to
Yes, yes.
just allow myself to imagine this beautiful transformation in my most powerful state possible. And yeah.
Yeah. So as you sort of, sounds like in that 9th month, you sort of reimagined what your birth might look like and who would be there. And yeah, how did that all come together for you?
I actually found Free Birth Society in the second trimester of my pregnancy, and I remember seeing these like hearing the stories and reading the words and just feeling like, wow, like this is amazing, but I don't know if I can do this. Let's just try it for the first time with someone there, and then maybe for the next one. And but it was there. It was definitely there. And yeah, I think that it was, how I see it is that I was more paying attention to what this baby wanted me to do in preparation for the birth. And in the beginning, it felt like I wasn't listening to this baby so much, or the baby wasn't communicating it so much in the beginning. So the 9th month was really where things shifted, and a lot of, like, most of the work was done in that last month. And I'm really grateful that it did happen, because it changed everything. I really do believe that, yeah, birth changes everything, and how we're born impacts literally everything.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yeah.
Birth matters so deeply.
Yeah,
Yes.
it really does.
Mm. And for
Yeah,
with your own birth, did you come in your own time? Do you know that?
I did. Yes. Everything happened naturally, up to the point where there was meconium in the waters, and then the midwife started listening to the heartbeat frequently, and she interpreted those things as um, a very serious risk to my health. And I'm pretty sure that it wasn't the case, but I know that my parents, they were really scared when they heard that, because they didn't even imagine that something could go wrong. And the kind of childbirth education that was available in Hungary in the 90s compared to what we have today with the internet and just being able to connect with anyone at any point of the globe is, yeah, it's very, very different. There was this midwife who I've actually connected with before my birth. It was a very beautiful connection. She was a certified midwife as well, and she was very much, her work is a lot inspired by Michel Audin and the work he did in France in the 70s. And yeah, so she was kind of navigating how to be a certified midwife but be in service of the families. And she's had a lot of, like, a lot of good stories and a lot of bad stories, and just trying to stay afloat. And finally the system crushed her down completely. And yeah, the whole ordeal, prison and trials and all the stuff out there, the classic witch hunt. So yeah. Yeah, but I know that I came in my own time.
On time? Yes.
Yeah.
I remember you speaking about, and I experienced this as well, is like the time that people often describe as like the thinning of the veil in those last like weeks and days of pregnancy, where I remember just, yeah, sort of being in a like almost a cosmic bubble and not really taking in so much anymore from other people and turning more inward and having less focus on what other people were saying around me or what was happening. For you, how were those last weeks as you awaited your son's arrival?
Pretty much exactly what you described. Like I remember vividly not listening to the conversation and feeling like everyone was like so far away, and the sounds were so far away, and how I was like I couldn't even find the interest in myself to make an effort to follow the line of the conversation. And I spent a lot of time in nature in the last couple of weeks, and it was very, very hot in July and August, and I was very much like I felt a very deep desire to be in water and to be in this suspended state and just not feel the heaviness of the earth and the pulling of the gravity. And the day before my birth, my sister gave me a craniosacral therapy session, it helped me to release some tension that I had in my hip. I did some work with a doula friend who works with water, and it was a couple of weeks prior, and I remember her telling me that she felt like my hip was not really open yet. And so with my sister, we did this session of opening up the hip, and I really felt like something happened there. And then we went for a big walk, and
your sister and mother were with you during these days and weeks prior to his birth?
yeah.
Yeah.
So my mom and dad, they came to France by car, and then my sister joined us, and then my brother joined us, and then my sister's boyfriend joined us as well. And they weren't staying with us, but they were close by. And the night of the arrival of my sister's boyfriend was when my sensation started. And I was kind of joking with her when I felt the first couple of sensations that, oh, the baby was just waiting for the third king to arrive, and now he is ready to come. And yeah. But the presence of the men was, it felt like a further protective circle. So they weren't so much in my space. My partner, yes, but not the others. And my sister and mother, they were very much present. They're so sweet. They actually did a doula training, both of them, before.
Wow.
Because they really wanted to be able to help me in an intelligent way, if that's what I wanted. And so they were just amazing, really amazing. Makes me so nostalgic to go back to revisiting this
Yes. Yes. And how did his labor begin?
Yeah, so we did this work with my sister, this body work, and then I was floating in water, and then I was like really in a hurry to go home that night. And so we went home, and I was laying in my bed, and I started feeling some like intense menstrual cramps, ones that I haven't felt this much cramping before when I had my when I was bleeding. But that's how I would describe it. That's what it felt like. And then it kept going all night long, and we went out for a walk in the park with my partner, and I just remember being very annoyed and just not wanting anything and just not comfortable anywhere. And so we went back up, and he prepared the whole space. He lit some candles, and he was just so, yeah, he was holding the space beautifully for me. And so his two older boys, they were at home, they were asleep in their room, and I felt their presence a lot, and I was very concerned that they're there, and I didn't want to like scare them or bother them. And so when my mom and sister came over around, I don't know, maybe 6 in the morning, then my mom dropped them off with some family, and that's where things really started to intensify. And yeah, I was just walking around the apartment. We had a birth pool. I went into the water, out of the water. My voice really opened up when the boys left. That was a very big difference. Like, that was a big shift that I noticed. I was like, wow, okay, so that's what was keeping me from really like allowing myself to go with this process. And I had a dear friend who came as well, who was taking some beautiful photographs. And yeah, it just kept going and going and going, and no sense of time, no sense of space, and just feeling completely lost.
Do you remember what sort of sounds you that came out of you in that period of time? Were they like deep moans? Were they more melodic? Do you even remember? I know I don't remember everything
I
about
have
my
no
birth.
idea.
Yeah. I remember thinking I was loud, and then people telling me you weren't loud. I was like, I thought I was being loud, but yeah.
I don't remember, to be honest. I don't remember, almost like I remember that my eyes were closed most of the time, and I remember that I was vocalizing when I remember that because I had a fear before about not being able to open up like the throat chakra, and so when I heard the sounds that came out, I was like, okay, it's all fine, it's coming out, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't remember like at what time happened what, and
I don't
no
I don't
idea.
remember those things either.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a special place, isn't it? Where we
Yeah.
go, and yeah, it's just so interesting how in that moment I was desperately looking for the things that I read and learned, and I couldn't access any of it. And afterwards, I tried to go back to what I was going through in the birth process, and I couldn't remember any of it. It's just like a blank 24 hours. And where the lights turned up, symbolically speaking, was when I felt my son's head crowning, and that awoke me very much. And then from there, it was just so fast.
Yes. And so who all was with you in your birthing space, and what was can you give us sort of a lay of the land? Were you in a room? Was it bright? Was it dark? Do you remember any of those details, or who was there?
I was in our bedroom, and just before the emergence, I was feeling like I was dying, and I kept apologizing to my partner that I'm sorry, but I can't do this, and I'm so sorry. And then a neighbor actually rang the bell. And then so my partner, he went to deal with them, and it was just so ridiculous because one of our neighbors thought that he was hitting me, and that's why I was screaming, because my partner is a Black man, and we live in this weird complex where people just would assume that directly, even though they saw that I had a huge belly, and they didn't even think that I was giving birth. And so this neighbor went to talk to like the head of the building, who came to ring the bell. And so I heard the bell, and I heard my partner just screaming, "No, she's giving birth, leave us alone," and just smashed the door. And yeah, and then that was not so much, like that was just a little before the transition. And so yeah, that was a little bit of, it kind of brought me back, this experience. And I felt very much bothered, like I was thrown off a little bit by this, and just feeling the presence of all those people around us in the different apartments. And
Yes.
yeah, and then not so long after, I was left alone in the room for a while, which was very, very nice. Because even though I invited all of these people into the space, today I'm not sure whether it was the best of the choices that I could make. It was very important for me in that moment, but I wouldn't do it again like this, because I think it would have been a lot faster if hadn't all these people been there. So my mother was there, my sister was there, my partner was there, a dear friend, Zoe, who was taking photos, and my doula popped in as a friend for an hour, and then she left, so she wasn't there for the whole thing, but she came and gave us some support. And she was actually suggesting to all the other people there to give us some space, and to kind of just leave the room, and let us be just my partner and I. And yeah, and so when crowning was happening, I was in our room on the mattress. I was kneeling, and my mother was on one side, my sister on the other, and my partner was in front of me. And yeah, I remember I kept reaching down to my yoni throughout the entire birth process, just trying to, I don't know, maybe I was trying to evaluate the dilation, or I have no idea what I was looking for. I was just desperately looking for some kind of clue as to how far along I am. And so when I felt that very, like that amazing little piece of hair, and just that his head, it was the most beautiful thing I've ever touched in my life. And yeah, at that point I woke up, and I was very conscious of what was happening. And yeah, from that point on, it was 15 minutes maximum until first his head came out. The ring of fire was excruciating. And I remember turning to my mother and just screaming, like, "Is it supposed to hurt this much?" And she was like, yes, you're doing amazing. It's supposed to hurt this much, and it's almost over. And that was it was very reassuring to have her there, having gone through this with me and my sister and my brother. It was so important to have her wisdom. And yeah, and so the head came, and then with the next contraction, the body came as well. And I didn't experience the fetal ejection reflex, but my baby just kind of, he came out so fast with all the amniotic fluid just coming out with him. It was a lot of, like, so much relief when he was finally there. And we didn't actually know if it would be a boy or a girl, but now I know, so I'm saying he.
Yes.
Yeah, and so he kind of fell down to the mattress, and I remember pausing for a couple of seconds before picking him up. And yeah, I picked him up, and just, he was in my arms, and there were a couple of seconds there which felt very, very long, where I thought, like, he was dead. There's no sound, he's not moving, what's happening? And I was so calm. I was so calm. And I remember, like, I was so every single time when I imagined during my pregnancy, when I came and like when I faced this fear that we all have, and that is such an important guide for us. What if my baby is dead? I remember not having any fear in that moment. It was just all okay. And so that moment that felt very, very long suddenly passed, and he opened his little eyes, and I just lost myself in those beautiful, deep black eyes of his. And then he started to make some gurgly noises, and I was caressing him and put him on my breast, and he came to, and it was just the most perfect, amazing moment ever. And since we were already in bed, I just kind of leaned back, and we stayed there. And yeah, it was, I remember a time where weeks later with my sister were walking, and I told her that I really would like to talk about the birth, and she was like, okay, well, let's talk about the birth. And we were silent for a couple of minutes, and I kind of felt weird, and I was like, but I don't have anything to say. Like, it was all so normal. Like, what are we supposed to talk about? And this is really how I feel, that it was just part of normal life, and there was nothing special, and it was just totally ordinary. Like, of course, it's ecstatic and it's amazing, and I will never forget it for the rest of my life, but it just happened so, yeah, it was just evident. It was all just so natural and so obvious. I don't know which, there must be a better.
Yes, is there another word in one of, how many languages do you speak?
So my mother tongue is Hungarian. I speak English, French. I used to speak German and a little bit of Spanish.
Yes. Is there a word in one of those other languages that feels like it would fit better there?
No, I don't want, if I change to another one, then this conversation is gone.
But yes, I agree with what you're saying. It's like this magic, and yet it's also just like natural and doesn't need any outside anything. It just unfolds in a way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I remember a couple of people who told me after I shared the good news and just told that my son arrived in our home, and a couple of reactions that told me how brave I was, and how it was so, I don't know, courageous, and it always felt kind of off to me, because I didn't feel all those things. I didn't feel like I was doing anything special. Like, there is nothing special about this. It's just birth, and it's just, yeah, it's.
And yet also, like, birthing in this way is transforming your son's life, your life, the world. Like, if, you know, like we speak about birth being this like really potent, important passage in our life. And so it also is really important what you're doing too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe a thought I'm having right now is that maybe this is what's so special, having, like, rediscovering these very humane moments that.
There's a little man.
Yeah. Yeah, so the ability to rediscover the simplicity of these human experiences, it feels something very inspiring to me. And the families that I'm working with are all amazing examples of this, because they all feel the same, that it's just something that's completely ordinary but in its simplicity, it becomes so deeply transformative of how we always delegate authority and responsibility, and so just the act of staying with it and holding it is not hard to do. It's not complicated, but it's very, very challenging mentally and physically, and like in every sense.
Yes, and I can relate to that as well. And like, you know, when I free birthed my daughter, some people said similar things, and I felt sort of similarly, where it's, you know, this is normal and simple and ordinary, and yet to people who have only witnessed super medicalized birth or in the hospital and didn't even know that it was possible that we as women can birth our babies on our own without anyone. So to them, sometimes hearing our stories can be transformative for them.
Yeah.
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 Do you feel like we should wrap up with your son home?
I just want to ask them what their plan is. Just can
Sure.
we take a quick
Yeah,
pause?
I'll take a pause and I'll go pee while you do
Okay,
that. We'll come back.
cool.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, we are back after a little break, and now Lisa is gonna speak to her placenta and postpartum. We just reached his emergence. And yeah, what would you like to say about the time after that?
It was just complete bliss, the whole thing. I had a couple of fears around, like, and not fear around the placenta, but I remember feeling concerned and not being able to like completely relax until the birth process was completed, and the placenta came very easily and very quickly in the, I think it was in the hour after the birth. I didn't look at the time, so I'm not exactly sure, but it felt very, very, very natural, and yeah, it just all went in its own rhythm, and my baby stayed attached to its placenta for the first maybe 48 hours. I had no idea what I wanted to do with it. I have heard about all the different possibilities, and it just felt like I cannot decide this in advance, and I will just see in the moment what feels right. And so we kept him attached to the placenta for a couple of like maybe 2 days, and then his older brothers were the ones who were holding the candles. We actually did a cord burning ceremony, and they were very grateful to be part of the process in this way. And yeah, it was all just very sweet. And yeah, I stayed in bed for 40 days. My mother and sister, they stayed on, and they were supporting me in the postpartum period, which was just so amazing to be able to be nurtured and mothered while I was learning how to mother my baby. And I didn't have a lot of people coming and going, which was very great as well, to be able to have that space just for us. And breastfeeding was also very easy, and it went like it was, there was just a flow to it all, and very big emotional waves, and a lot of a lot of tears, and a lot of, yeah, just sleepless nights, of course. But it was, I remember feeling just so in love with my baby, with my new self, with my body and what it has done, and with my partner, and just with all the people who were there around us and supporting us in this period. It was, yeah, it was also part of this non-space, non-time continuum that the birth was. And I had a very gradual coming back to the normal existence which was not the normal existence because it was completely different, of course, but just meaning that coming back to the daily tasks and just functioning in this world as a human that is part of the I don't even know where I'm going. Yeah.
Yes, re-entering the space. I would love to know, when did you name your son and how did that process go for you?
We actually came up with a name for a boy and a girl. My partner dreamt of a name which we chose as the name if it was a boy, and I made up a name for a girl. And so when we discovered that our baby was a boy, then we knew that this was the name, and it felt very, very right. But we never used this name before, so we weren't calling the baby by a name. Well, it was inside of me, and so my son's name is Nayan Gabriel, and
Will you say it again?
his name is Nayan, so it's Nayam.
Nayan.
It's a mirror name that works both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what
So
does
it was
his name mean? Does his name have a meaning that is close to your heart, or?
it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't exist, I think. I mean, that's what we were trying to look for any kind of traces, but he literally just woke up one day and he was like, I have
This is
the
it.
name, and
Yeah.
this is it.
Oh,
And
wonderful. Yes. My daughter's
Yeah.
name we made up as well. So we created it. And so we
What's
also
her name?
Charlo with a
Wow.
Charlow.
Wow.
Yeah.
So beautiful. All these babies communicating their names. So interesting.
Yes.
Mm. Yeah.
Well, I would love to maybe transition towards, your radical birth keeper and how that came into your sphere and what that looks like for you these days.
Yeah, so for my pregnancy, I was preparing with the Free Birth Society's Complete Guide to Free Birth, and the presence and inspiration that Emily and Yolanda have given me through these couple of weeks before the birth. It was just so personal and so intimate and so special, and I just felt this very, very strong attraction to be in the presence of these wise women, and I knew that I am on the path of becoming the woman that I wish I had had to be present at my birth. And since I didn't find her anywhere, I had to midwife myself in my birth, and so I think that was the moment where I consciously realized that this is my path, and I never would have thought in my life that I am going to go in this direction. And so it took a couple of months for me to accept it, actually, because I was like, it's just so cheesy. I give birth and then I want to work in birth. Like everyone does that. How can I no, Eliza, you have to find something more special. And I was like, no. No, this is it's such a deep inner calling. And I think it was Yolanda who mentioned in one of our classes together that she feels like there is this energetic heritage that we all have as women to be called into this work, and how we don't need the permission of anybody to just do the work, because we are all the descendants of the wise women that were burned and persecuted, and it is our work.
Yes. For those listeners that may not like fully understand what we mean when we say radical birth keeper, could you define what it means for you?
What it means for me is an authentic midwife, um, a wise woman who is there holding another woman's hand when she needs another woman present to just be and not get any advice, not be told what to do, not not have another woman just take the space up or the responsibility, but just to hold her in whatever she's going through, and to hold also the space for the ceremonies that the different rites of passages need to be, how these rites of passages need to be celebrated that we have as women. And yeah, for me, a radical birth keeper is a woman who is serving her community in an authentic way and just being there for everything that is, for all the events of life from birth to death.
Yes,
To
yes.
portals and everything in between.
Yes, yes. What was I gonna say? No, I lost it. It floated away, whatever it was.
Yeah, so I am actually in the process of looking for these roots in my family, and I have a very like a weird certainty that there were midwives in my family that I don't know of, and I've been meaning to retrace this matrilineal heritage that I have, but that is not yet in the conscious knowing part of my family stories. And yeah, just it's very humbling to see how both my sister and I we are working with women, and both of us are tending to healing the wounds of the women in our families and just femininity in general. And yeah, seeing a lot of examples of mothers who are sacrificing themselves for the family life, and just looking at all of those intergenerational traumas that are here, and bringing them into the conscious sphere, and becoming more and more certain of of shifting these perspectives in my respective family, because I have come into contact with, thanks to Emily and her great inspiration in Pre-Birth Society, I have started to go deeper and deeper into matriarchal societies, and I am starting a course this January for 2 years, learning about matriarchal societies all over the world. And I'm really inspired by this work because, like, on a personal level, I am starting the creation of the matriarchal home and just putting women back into the center and the leaders of their families, and just feeling the weight of that. And just it's so interesting to discover in myself all these unconscious ways of being convinced that we do need someone to save us, and that we are fragile and we need the whatever, when in reality I resonate a lot more with the archetype of the matriarch, and just allowing myself to have the time to grow into this role is very, it's a beautiful process, actually. And I find that Emily and Yolanda, they've both been very inspiring to me in this way, and just seeing all these women coming out from the radical birthkeeper school, becoming the breadwinners of their families, becoming the ones who are literally leading the whole family forward and just making everything happen. It's just really beautiful and amazing.
Yes. I mean, this work I feel that you're doing, that we're doing, in this space is like healing the past and like healing the future, healing the present. It's shifting everything.
Yeah, exactly. And I just imagining the world in which our children will be able to live once all the work has been done is just it has become my guiding star, because I don't think it's a coincidence that all of this work is coming up now. And yeah, it's a lot, but it's a very humbling work.
Yes. And I love that you spoke to, it's coming back to me about rites of passage, that we all, especially as women, we have them built into our biology, when we begin menstruating and when we choose to birth, if we birth, and that we all experience them, even if they aren't honored and witnessed and held by those around us. But that's some of the work that you and I are both doing to honor and witness women in these rites of passage and create ceremony and ritual for them, which is so important, and like incorporating it in multiple levels in our mind and body and spirit.
Yeah.
So.
And each of you who are listening, if you have been to an intentional space created for women, either a women's circle or any other kind of ceremony, then you know what we're talking about, because the feeling of being in this intentional space, it reminds us that like this is the way it's meant to be, and these are the kind of experiences that we're meant to have together. And I'm absolutely certain that women 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago have felt this exact same thing that we're feeling today in 2021, almost 2022, when we gather, because it's just, again, it's a timeless space that we enter into when we're honoring these rites of passage of womanhood. And of course there are these same kind of experiences available to men, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing more of that happening, because I feel like as women we are doing a lot of work, and I really have the prayer in my heart to see the same kind of healing happening for the men, because we've all been harmed by systems of oppression under patriarchy, and we all need to do our own work to weed out what doesn't serve us anymore. So I feel very much what's the right word? What do I feel? A lot of things. I'm just grateful to have a son, actually, because he will be an amazing mirror for me in seeing how well I'm doing the work, because all the men in the world who are harming women had a mother and come from a mother and have been mothered. And yes, we can, like, we do need to hold the men responsible for the things and the harm that they're doing, but we also have to remember that we all have an effect on each other, and we do need to look at what families those men are coming from and what the dynamics of the relationships were in those families. And I really do feel like I need to take a good hard look at myself on what I'm teaching to my son, because I will be responsible for how he will approach women, for how he will look at women, for how he will touch them, for how he will speak to them, for how he will protect them and respect them and love them and honor them. And just, yeah, I really am curious to see the man that he will become.
Yes, I've had those very similar thoughts with my son as well, and in interactions with him, as sometimes he, does things to my body in a way that I'm like, no, like, and I have to, hold that boundary and help him to learn and know that that's not okay to touch me in that way and things like that. So
Yeah.
I have had some of those similar thoughts. Also, you speaking about intentionally sort of remembering and feeling that you have this, birth wisdom in your bones, in your soul, in your blood, that ancestors of yours also did this birth work. I find that really beautiful. I've had a journey of my own. Like, I've been in the birth world for over 10 years. I've been a radical birth keeper for a few years now. And I have only sort of in this last maybe year and a half been realizing that, like, realizing that my mother, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, she unintentionally had a unassisted birth, but like she birthed my mother without medical attendance there. As they were getting ready to leave for the hospital, she had this birth that was untouched. And then having this memory of my grandmother, who she's dead at this point, she was 95. But remembering the story she told me of like being at a neighbor's birth, this woman didn't want to go to the hospital. It wasn't her thing. And so the husband came and got my grandmother, and that she went and was witness there for this woman birthing. And she didn't have, formal training. I feel like it's in our soul, it's in our bones. We don't have to have this specific education. Not saying that it's not good to learn and know, but like it also is within us too.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like I can respect if somebody wants a lot of I can respect that somebody would want a person of authority present for their birth, who is bringing a lot of knowledge with them and who can, at the blink of an eye, identify any kind of problem that can go wrong. And I can understand that gives the sense of security to someone. But when I go back to my experience and just turning to my mother and asking her whether what I was feeling was something that she's also felt, and just having that very simple reassurance of, yes, what you're feeling is absolutely fine and it's normal and it's like you're doing amazing. Like that's literally all that we need, I think. To have a woman there who's felt it, who's done it, who's seen it, who went through it, and who came out, and who just was initiated into motherhood in this way. And yeah, knowledge is important, but also can be overrated when there is something so animalistic and so intuitive happening, because birth is it's just an involuntary reflex that if we want to protect it, that means that we shouldn't interfere. And even our thoughts can interfere, and so many things can interfere. So it's very delicate, but we are getting back to that knowledge, I feel, and more women are waking up to remembering that maybe less is more.
Yes, and that nothing is guaranteed in life either, that whether we birth our babies at home on our own or in a hospital with the like best medical providers that are possible, it doesn't mean that us or our babies will survive. We're likely to survive, but having those people there doesn't necessarily change what perhaps will happen. I don't know if I said that very well, but I hope you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's, for me, the biggest teaching in my own experience and in each experience that I have with the families that I'm working with is just this. The question I keep coming back to is, can you stay with the mystery? Can you allow the mystery to be there? Can you be okay with not knowing and not having any guarantee? Because we never have any fucking guarantee. So whatever way we can try to, yes, you can try to control and have a feeling that you are deciding what's happening, but when we allow that mystery to be there and just stay with it, there is a very potent portal that can give us a passage into something truly otherworldly, I think.
Well, that feels like a good place to sort of move towards our ending. I would love for you to share, for people listening that would love to be in contact with you or invest in your services. How can they best do that?
So I have a website, which is called alunaya.com, ALUNAYA.com, which is the girl's name that we came up with while I was pregnant, and it felt very natural to name my business because, yeah, these are my two babies that were born in the same year. So alunaya.com is my website, and on Instagram it's at alunaya / how do you
underscore is what we call it.
Okay, so alunaya _birth. And I'm working on a couple of offerings right now. One of them is a guide for honoring the placenta, and it's about traditions around this magnificent organ and all that you need to know to free birth your baby and your placenta in the intimacy of your own home. And it's a deep and thorough guide for families who are ready to take responsibility for their birth entirely. And I'm also working on a guide specifically for French mamas and papas, so who are living in France and who need information to navigate the bureaucracy around birth declaration, which can be so tricky.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for doing that work. I will definitely include links to your website and to your Instagram on the show notes. And yes, and thank you for spending time with us today. I hope that you're finding
you so much.
Yes. I hope that all you listeners are finding joy and bliss as you move through your life. If you're interested in connecting with me deeper, follow the links in the show notes. I offer a free clarity call. And remember that we all gaze upon the same moon, the moon that shifts the tides of all the oceans of the world. We are connected. Be brave, be bold, be love, be you.